Hello and welcome to IndyStar's Pit Pass Live, presented by Gainbridge. I am IndyStar sports reporter Jim Aiello, and I am joined by Motorsports Insider, the dapper-looking Nathan Brown here, and we are here to talk about the Indianapolis 500 in August. Is it August?
It is finally August, and the race is here. This is a great day to be with you guys. This feels very different, but I don't know anything different. This is my first Indy 500.
I was going to say, this is your first one. I've been talking to people around here. Everybody says it feels weird, but this for you, this is can I use the phrase new normal? This is kind of like your new normal, right?
Yeah, well, let's see how many times we say that in this next 90 minutes. I've been coming to the 500 for a long time. My first one was actually in 2002, last one in 2014, but I've always been in the stands, and we will not have anyone in the stands today.
Yeah, so what's been the kind of the mood around here? I haven't been here, and I've read a lot of stories you've been writing, and everybody's been writing, but what's it been like? I've been talking to people, everybody's been saying it kind of feels like, almost feels like a test day today. A little different.
I think it's felt like a series of test days.
Okay.
The biggest one so far being on Saturday. But that's one of the few other races that I went to this year at Texas. Felt exactly like that. It was just this long whirlwind day of cars going on track, empty grandstands, and felt very much like a big test session. I think given how big this race is and all the aura around it, the pomp and circumstance that'll precede the race, I think this will finally feel like a race. But all of these days leading up to it, Carb Day certainly did not feel like a Carb Day that we've all grown to know and love. I think this day will stand out a little bit, but everything leading up to it has been very much that way. That's
going to be. I like that. When I was back in your position, and I used to ask this question to the guests we had on there. I said, what's your moment? What's going to be the moment where it feels like the Indy 500 to you? And I know it's different this year, but for you, like, what's going to be the time where you're like, okay, it's here, we're ready to race, and I'm like going to lock in on this thing?
I think when we start to hear the pomp and circumstance that starts this race, when we hear Jim Cornelison sing Back Home Again in Indiana, when you hear taps playing, when we hear the roar of the Thunderbirds that come over the track, I think that's when this is really going to start to kick in. I've had moments this morning where it's felt a little bit like that, but it's still, I look over your shoulder and I see these empty grandstands.
Yeah.
It's just not quite what I would have expected 10 or 11 months ago for my first 500 to feel like, but it's getting there, certainly.
You wrote a story, it was in the special section of the Indianapolis Star today, about how this thing came together. Mm-hmm. I know it was a long story, so you don't have to go through it all now. But, this thing was kind of a work in progress for months. And trying to figure out what's it going to be like. Are there going to be fans here? Give us a little bit of a sense of what it was like for Roger Penske in his first time being the owner of IMS and IndyCar about trying to get this thing together.
Yeah, I think the really interesting part of that story is that, entering that week, heading into St. Pete, I don't think anyone, whether it be Mark Miles, Doug Boles, Roger Penske, had an idea of the gravity of the circumstances that we were going to be facing in 4 or 5 short days. On that Monday, we were going into I recorded a podcast. It felt like a totally normal week, and then so quickly the NBA went on pause. The Big Ten men's basketball tournament in Indianapolis was canceled, and all this stuff started happening so rapidly. And I remember Roger telling me that the first time he realized that the 500 was going to be in jeopardy were those days in St. Pete when they realized they couldn't hold that race, and immediately they canceled or postponed the first 4. And Mark was flying home that Friday from St. Pete after that news had broken, and he told me immediately they realized that it was probably not going to be tenable to be able to hold that race on May 24th. And that's kind of what started to kick things off those first few weeks. The biggest things were conversations with NBC on when this race was going to happen, and that kind of started to snowball everything.
So Roger made a bold statement early on and said, there's going to be fans here. We're going to have fans for the Indianapolis 500. It's not the Indianapolis 500 without the fans. Obviously, circumstance changed that for him. And again, I don't think anybody would probably disagree it was the right decision. He's playing it safe, trying to keep everybody's health in mind during these troubling times. So when did that realization come? And you talked to him. What was it like for him to have to make that call?
Yeah, I think when we first heard him make that statement back on June 7th that this race was either going to happen with fans or not happen at all,
Yeah.
I think he felt like he was making the most educated statement that he could with the information he had at that time. At that point, this race was still 2.5 months away.
Right.
Things were trending in the right direction in Indiana from a COVID-19 perspective.
Yeah.
And he felt like, I think that statement showed that he was so confident that the circumstances were going to pan out in their favor that it was kind of a no-brainer to make. And even as this process continued to unfold, I think the reason that we saw them come out with that 88-page plan on how they were going to be able to hold 80,000 or so fans here was because they needed to be in a position where they could possibly host people here. You couldn't say back in June, oh, we're not sure if that's going to pan out, because if you do that, then and things pan out in August that it's going to work out and you can have fans here, then you're not ready, you're not prepared. And we all know that Roger Penske is the most prepared person.
That's right.
In any business sector, in any racing sector that there could possibly be.
Right, and it seems like he's got the support of the paddock. I mean, just everybody, like you said in your story today, and it's a lot of just that sentiment of thank God Roger's here. Like, thank God Roger's been able to kind of guide us through what has been one of the toughest times in IndyCar's history.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've heard that phrase over the last 3 months, the thank God Roger's here, thank God Roger's at the helm, and I don't think anyone has meant that as a slight to the Holman George family.
No,
but I think it just goes to show exactly how much had to happen in order for us to be sitting here on race day. It's something that no one has ever had to deal with. Roger has never been in this position before, and it's truly amazing that we're about ready to hold this race, given everything that's been going on here, both locally and around the world.
I am beyond excited to watch it. I am beyond excited to kind of experience it and feel it again. It's again, I know it's not May, it's not the same time, it's not the same feeling as it usually is, but I really just can't wait to. I think, like I said, I think once we get Jim Cornelison singing and you have the flyover, I think it's going to feel like, hey, we're watching the Indianapolis 500 again. It's happening, and I think in 20 or 30 years, I don't know how you feel about it, but we're going to look back at this and be like, that was a historic race. Indianapolis 500 is always an historic race, but today's feels especially, I don't know about important, but significant, maybe.
Yeah, I think every fan is going to, no matter how they're watching this race, whether you're sitting at home with family watching it on TV for the first time,
right,
whether you are standing up in a tree outside the track, like Dana Benbow wrote a story about in this week's Star about one fan who took those drastic measures, whether you are a yellow shirt working in this race, whether you're a driver, everyone is going to remember 20 or 30 years from now how they experienced this race, because no matter who the winner of this race is, it's going to be one that is remembered for decades and decades.
What's been the message to those people who have their streaks being broken? Is it this one doesn't count? Like, it's not your fault, your streak continues? Has that been what you've been hearing?
Yeah, so Doug Boles has said many times publicly, I think they actually came out with a video, whether it was, I think it was yesterday afternoon, where Doug actually said to fans, look, listen, his thing has even been, he's talked to some fans in the past that have said, I've been to every race except for this one where I was pregnant, or I was away fighting a war. And his message to those people even then has been, look, you were doing what you should have been doing, and those races should count in your streak, and this one is no different. If you could have been here, you would have been here. And I think that's the message that Doug and Mark and Roger have been giving to these Indy 500 fans that so wish they could be here today.
So listen, at the beginning of the show, as my job as host, I was supposed to tell you what's coming up. We're obviously going to talk about the race. We're also going to tell you about, we have guests on, and I forgot to do that because, again, I'm terrible at my job as host. Macklin-esque, I'm sorry. I did not do any. I really thought I could live up to it, but I didn't. But we do have our first guest here. It is the great Charlie Kimball with AJ Foyt Racing, and he's going to join Nathan after the commercial break. So stay tuned.
In both racing and investing, winning demands consistency. Lap after lap after lap. Gainbridge offers intuitive annuity products within an innovative digital platform to help you protect and grow your money, empowering you to save with confidence. Gainbridge, proud sponsor of the Indianapolis 500.
And we are back with this today's edition of Pit Pass Live. We are here at the Indy 500 just a couple hours before today's race, and we are joined by AJ Foyt Racing's Charlie Kimball. Charlie, how are you doing today?
I'm excited. It's race day. I know it looks and feels different for just about everybody involved here. I think the only person it probably looks the same for is no one. I mean, really, the heart and soul of this place isn't here without the fans. The fact that we get 500 miles is a great tribute to the Penske organization, Roger himself, Mark, Jay, Doug Boles, the president of this place. The fact that we get to go racing, do what we love, 11 rows of 3 to start this thing, 200 laps. It's a great day for it. The weather's going to be perfect. For all the fans that are watching and listening at home, I hope they have a great, very unique race day in August.
Mm-hmm. I know when I talked to you before this season started, you are now, of course, in your first season with AJ Foyt Racing, and this was one of those days that I know you've been looking forward to, being able to be in that AJ Foyt Racing garage, go into this race knowing that you're representing not only this team, but a legend like AJ. What are some of your emotions, thoughts, feelings coming into today's race wearing that AJ Foyt Racing logo?
I mean, driving for AJ it's a dream come true. When you drive for the first 4-time winner here at the track, there's a little extra understanding of what this place means. I won't say pressure, because in my mind I put enough pressure on myself to succeed and get the most out of what I have on the day. And I got the number 4 Tresiba Chevrolet crew together on Tuesday, and we were talking about this weekend. After last weekend, we had some real hardships. We struggled with the car. We didn't know quite what was going on, but we found a mechanical issue. We got it fixed. Go P11 on carb day, and I'll tell you guys that very quietly, I felt like this weekend in my 10 Indy 500 starts is my best shot yet at drinking milk. Even starting 29th, which it doesn't make sense that I should be that confident starting that far back. But at the same time, this crew, this team, that garage, and what it means, I'm ready to go racing.
You mentioned you start today's race 29th in the middle of row 10, right next to 3-time winner Elio Castroneves. You're one of the many really experienced drivers that are starting back in those final 4 rows. You have the likes of Will Power, Simon Pagenaud, Elio, Fernando Alonso, who's only raced in this race once but has so much experience and has achieved so much in his racing career. How do you envision that charge from the back to the front being like today?
Well, I think the nice thing about having 500 miles to do it is it doesn't have to be a frantic charge. It can be methodical. It can be almost linear in how we go about moving forward. I told some of the strategists on my timing stand that if they can get me in clean air, the car is fast enough, we can go forward. So if guys are struggling in track positions, always key here at the Indy 500, with a long pit lane, you lose just about a lap during a pit stop with in-laps and out-laps and a stop for 8 seconds or so. So if you can work that track position so you have clean air and leapfrog guys, and I know it exposes you and puts you in kind of that danger zone for an untimely yellow, but we're not here to run around 29th. We're not here to even finish 15th. We're here to win the thing. So if we can play the strategy cards right and give ourselves the opportunity to be up front, I believe we can stay up front.
Is it something to the point where you actually have conversations this week with guys like Elio, Will, Simon, of course your teammate Tony Kanaan, who's back there as well? Do you have conversations with those guys and kind of try to come up with any sort of a joint plan to work together to get up there?
Well, I think it's hard to plan amongst cars. It's hard to plan within your own car, because what do they say? Any good battle plan never survives first contact with the enemy. And I think any good race strategy never survives the green flag. You have to adapt. You have to think on your feet. They have to work on the car at every pit stop. They have to work on the strategy for every fuel stint. If it's a long stint, if it's a short one, early in the race, late in the race, whatever that looks like. So we're going to have to adapt. I think Elio's experience, I'm going to follow that bright yellow car through as much as I can, and then be ready to go race up front at the end.
Well, Charlie, we wish you the best of luck in today's race, your whole team, AJ Foyt Racing, Tony, Dalton, Best of luck to you guys. Thanks for joining us here on Pit Pass Live, and we will be back with you guys after this commercial break.
Thank you.
In both racing and investing, winning demands consistency. Lap after lap after lap. Gainbridge offers intuitive annuity products within an innovative digital platform to help you protect and grow your money, empowering you to save with confidence. Gainbridge, proud sponsor of the Indianapolis 500.
Palo's not here for some reason.
Go ahead.
And we're back with today's edition of Pit Pass Live, here live from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'm Nathan Brown, your motorsports insider, joined with my predecessor, Jim Aiello. We are in the middle of a 90-minute show here where we're going to break down the field, this race, what this day feels like, and also talk to some more guests as we get going here. So while I have you, Jim, let's start to break down this field a little bit. We'll start at the back in row 11. What stands out to you when we look at that row of guys there?
I'm really impressed. You just flipped on the host thing because I abandoned my duties, and you just flipped it right over there. Actually, before we get into that,
sure,
give us a preview of what other guests people can expect to have coming up here.
Yes, so we are going to have Doug Boles, the IMS president.
You guys are going to look so good together.
Yes,
and Doug.
I've been told by so many people that I look like Doug Boles. I both appreciate that compliment and don't think it's necessarily a proper comparison. Doug is incredible dresser, but it'll be great to have him on. We also expect to have McLaren racing director Gil de Ferran, 2003 Indy 500 winner, and also hoping to have Dale Coyne racing driver Alex Palou, who starts today's race in the Fast 9 in the 7th spot. So hope to have all three of those guys join us here soon.
That's excellent. All right, so we'll get back to your question. Starting in row 11, we're going to kind of go through these guys and who we think are going to have, the guys in interesting rows, sleepers maybe, guys we think may be able to have good races.
Mm-hmm.
I know when we talked before the show about this, you highlighted J.R. Hildebrand as a guy in the last row who might be able to do a little damage, somebody that's interesting to you. Why did you highlight him?
Yeah, he's one of these guys, obviously is best known at the Indy 500 for almost winning, like a couple other guys that we have around here, but he's a guy that has lots of experience driving in this race. I think this, if I remember right, might be his 10th Indy 500, which is amazing. He comes back here with Ryan Reinbolt Racing with Sage Karam as his teammate, and haven't had the best cars this last week on track, but it's just one of those experienced drivers that you wouldn't want to count out as maybe one of the lesser names that we mentioned, experienced drivers in the back of the field this year. So I think maybe with a little luck, maybe he works his way up and causes some magic today.
JR's the kind of guy who understands what it takes to win this race, because he's been so close before, that he knows that, first of all, it's just about surviving to the end.
Yep.
And then, starting in the back, I got a chance to talk to Charlie a little bit before you did, and he was just saying he's going to be able to take some risks. He's going to be able to take some chances starting in the back, and we'll get to Charlie in a little bit, but they're going to be able to try some things because they're starting in the back, and they don't really have a lot to lose. I mean, what are they going to do, go back even further in the field? This thing's about winning. So these guys are going to be able to take some shots. And so we can move up to the next row, because I know you're getting it ready here.
Yes.
But the guy I know you really want to talk about is Elio Castroneves.
Yes.
In the next row up.
Yes.
He is a guy, obviously has 3 of these, looking for number 4, and he's with the right team. We know he knows what he's doing here. Do you think he's got a chance to move all the way up through the field? And maybe this is a good time to talk about Chevy's problems so far this month.
Yes, so Elio has been one of those guys. As you mentioned, Chevy has kind of had a tough week. Did not perform well in qualifying. They just didn't have it, and I think the paddock really felt like it wasn't as much of a Chevy problem maybe as Honda just really came out of the gate super strong this year, and they brought it. And Elio is one of those guys that didn't get that benefit, but he is with Team Penske. He did qualify last among those 4 drivers, but I picked him to finish 3rd in today's race because of that experience, because of that drive, and I think that emotion that started to set in at some point this week when we met during Media Day, that this may very well be his last race as a Team Penske driver, and I think that means something, and he's got the experience to surprise us. He hasn't had maybe great last couple years here, but he's a guy that I think we could potentially see some good stuff from today.
You mentioned it might be his last race with Penske, but do you think it's his last Indianapolis 500?
I don't. now that we know he's not coming to race IMSA next year for Team Penske, his vision is that he had this 3-year contract. It was going to be to drive 500s with Team Penske and drive in their IMSA program. That's now over with, and he really wants to be a full-time IndyCar driver again. And I think there's a chance that happens. Even if he doesn't achieve that this offseason, I really think there's a strong chance that he's back in some way, shape, or form at next year's Indy 500. Kind of like Tony Kanaan, where you just don't want to see a guy like that's last Indy 500 to be without fans. He is such a fan favorite. The fans are so passionate about him ever since he won his first race in 2001. And I have this feeling that we will see him here again.
If he doesn't get it this year, I just want him to keep coming back until he does get that 4th.
Yeah.
It's such an elite class of drivers. So few people have ever accomplished it. And it would be nice to have, there are so few better ambassadors for the sport and for IndyCar racing and for the Indianapolis 500 than Helio Castroneves. And he can be that as a 3-time winner, don't get me wrong. But as a 4-time winner, that's it. That's like there's nobody's ever done better than that.
Yeah,
so
I agree. And we haven't seen, it's been almost 3 decades now since we've seen someone clinch that 4th win. So that would be something that would be super special for the sport.
So what do you think in terms of, we mentioned Chevrolet, their struggles. Do you think there's maybe something that they have hidden, like they're going to be a little bit better racing than they were? Because pure power right now, it's Honda. I think that was pretty clear during qualifying. Mm-hmm. Do you think they'll be a little racier, though, the Chevrolets, during the race today?
I think it's definitely possible. I think we've seen a lot of people say this week that what you saw in qualifying, I don't think is going to be how today turns out. I think today is going to be a pretty even fight between those two, and would certainly not be surprised to see a Chevy driver drink the milk today.
So you don't think you're going to get 15 Hondas like back to back finishing that way?
I don't believe so. All right, we are going to go into another commercial break, and we will be back with you guys shortly.
In both racing and investing, winning demands consistency. Lap after lap after lap. Gainbridge offers intuitive annuity products within an innovative digital platform to help you protect and grow your money, empowering you to save with confidence. Gainbridge, proud sponsor of the Indianapolis 500.
Thank you for watching Pit Pass Live at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'm Nathan Brown, IndyStar's Motorsports Insider. Joining me now is rookie IndyCar driver Alex Palou, Dale Coyne Racing driver. Alex, how are you doing just a couple hours before your first Indy 500?
I'm doing fantastic, thank you. It's just such a great day today. It's just a shame we don't have all the energy from the fans, but I hope they're gonna cheer for us and they're gonna enjoy it from home. And yeah, my first Indy 500, crazy, huh? We're gonna start from 7th. I think it's just the perfect starting position. Like, I'm gonna have an easier start than other drivers, and hopefully we can make some positions at the beginning so we have clean pit stops at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned starting 7th in this race on the inside of row 3. Who have you talked to, or what have you been told about what the start of this race is like? Going into turn 1 on lap 1, 230 plus miles an hour, the nerves of being in the 500 for the first time. Who have you been talking to, or how have you been kind of preparing for that epic moment in your racing career?
So I tried to talk to as many people as I could, past drivers, still drivers that I'm racing with today, and everybody from the team, so they can try to tell me what to expect. The thing is that we practice a lot, but we never practice a start going 3 wide, and that's going to be my first time going 3 wide into turn 1, right? So I don't know what to expect. Hopefully I can I can have enough time to get myself positioned before going into turn one. I just want to go through turn one. If I have the chance to overtake somebody, obviously we'll have to go for it. But yeah, I don't know what to expect, to be honest. Everybody was telling me like different stuff, so now I have like 20 different things in my mind. So hopefully one of them, it's what's going to happen. So I'm going to be ready for it.
Yep. We mentioned you're a rookie. This is your first 500. You were able to sneak into the Fast 9 on Saturday with a really awesome run. You really excelled in Fast Friday when we kind of got that boost into the engines. Your Honda, along with so many Hondas, performed particularly well. How key was it for you to get into the Fast 9 and ensure a first 3-row spot for your first Indy 500?
It was awesome. We already knew we had a lot of potential into the car. I was feeling really comfortable during all week. So you go into qualifying and you still don't know if people is hiding something. Like you never know if that last half a mile per hour people, they have an extra. So I was confident, but I didn't know if we could have made it to Fast 9. That was the target, but you never know. And it was so important. We got a new sponsor, Guaranteed Rate, and that was, I think, just because of we got to Fast 9. We showed that we have enough speed there to try and win this show. So, yeah, it was awesome, not only for me, but I think for all the crew.
You mentioned that we don't have the energy that you expected for your first Indy 500 when you signed on with Dale Coyne Racing back in this off-season. I'm curious, though, what the energy is like back in your home country of Spain. What has these last couple weeks and even months been for you being able to represent your home country in this race? We have another big name Spaniard in this race, Fernando Alonso, but you might have the country's best chance to be able to win this race. What has these last couple weeks been like for you from a local media standpoint?
It's been fun. It's been fun just because you are the rookie and all the media is centered obviously on a two-time world F1 champion. So obviously all the media was for him, and there's Fernando Alonso going into 500 and also another Spanish driver. So it was fun at the beginning, and it's fun to see how everything evolved. Still, the media is talking obviously more about the other driver than us, but it's been fun. It's been fun. Everybody's trying to speak with me about that thing with Fernando. I think I'm getting more attention from Americans media than from Spanish media, so thank you so much for having me here. But it's been really fun. I think that people is getting more interested in us there in Spain, which is awesome, not only for me, but I think also for the championship.
We've heard you talk, the couple of chances that we've gotten a chance to speak with you over these last 10 days or so, and every time I've asked you this question, it's always been, you can tell that you're really excited. I don't get the sense that you feel a whole lot of pressure, and if you do, you're hiding it really well. What are the balance of your emotions like going into a day like this that could potentially change your life?
Yeah, it can, and I hope it does. I'm super excited. I'm just a kid living the dream every day, so that's maybe why I'm always so happy. I'm always excited. It's gonna be super tough out there, but I think we've traveled so much to get here that I'm just gonna enjoy every lap, and by doing that you just get more confidence with the car, and you have more chances to winning this race. So super happy, super proud, and super lucky to have a great car for today.
I know when we talked to you before the season opener at Texas Motor Speedway, that was your first oval race of your career. Now that we've had 3 oval races, you've gotten to practice on this track so many days over this last 10 days or so. How would you describe your comfort level on an oval track?
Yeah, it's been tough, and it's still tough. So obviously I'm more comfortable now than at Texas. At Texas, I didn't know what I was doing. And here I'm starting to learn some stuff, and I'm starting to predict what the car is going to do and what the other drivers are going to do, depending on what stage of the race we are. But I would say my level of comfort, it's still like 85%. Like, I don't know what to expect today. Like, you said about the start. So I'm more comfortable on road course, but I'm enjoying a lot. I love oval racing. I think it's super exciting for the fans, but also for the drivers. With the strategies, the pit stops, all the drafts you can do. So yeah, hopefully I can take the first couple of pit stops just to get more confidence in, get more knowledge from the 500 and from the big guys, and hopefully I'll be 100% comfortable to win this race at the end.
That's all the time we have for Alex. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Alex Palou starts today's race from the 7th position on the inside of row 3. We will be back after this short commercial break.
In both racing and investing, winning demands consistency. Lap after lap after lap. Gainbridge offers intuitive annuity products within an innovative digital platform to help you protect and grow your money, empowering you to save with confidence. Gainbridge, proud sponsor of the Indianapolis 500.
Hello, race fans, and welcome back to Pit Pass Live, presented by Gamebridge. I am IndyStar sports reporter Jim Aiello, joined as always, and by as always, I mean over the last couple segments, by motorsports insider Nathan Brown. Nathan, we were, previous to your great interview with Alex there, we were kind of going row by row. I think this next row might be the one that, I don't know if it intrigues you the most, but it does speak to something you wrote about in the paper today, which was that this is a really deep field through and through, just talent, top to bottom. But especially in the back, there's a lot of experienced veterans, and there's a lot of guys that could maybe make their way to the front. This row feels particularly, or at least two of the guys, like they might fit that category for you.
Absolutely. So you've got Simon Pagenaud on the inside of that row, joined by Fernando Alonso and James Davison. This is Davison's 6th race. But the two biggest names, of course, Pagenaud being the defending champion, Fernando Alonso, this being his 2nd Indy 500, but as a 2-time Formula One champion, brings so much aura and experience to this race. I think, as we talked about with Elio and talked about with Charlie in his interview, this is a race where you could potentially see a winner come from those last 4 rows. And Simon, being a defending champion, he's a guy who's been described maybe as having the most racy car out there. He's just been so good in traffic this week plus of practices, and it's been really exciting to see, be really interesting to see how he fares back there in the 25th spot. Of course, Fernando as well. He led more than 20 laps in his first 500 in 2017. Certainly, I think is a guy that's with maybe a little bit of luck, maybe tagging along and following some other cars there up toward the front, could be a big factor when we get down to the last 30 laps of this race.
You know what I like is that it looks like we aligned this perfectly, because we have the Aero McLaren SP guy, Zach Brown, is right behind us as we're talking about his driver. Like we did that really perfectly. But no, I want to get back to Simon. I want to know what his mentality is like, because this is a guy that was, this time last year, he had won the GP. He was getting into this race, and by this time last year, I mean the 500, so you guys know what I mean. But he was kind of, I don't know if he was driving for his spot at Penske, but in a way he was, his career at Penske. So, and then he wins. He sweeps May, has the biggest race of his life at the Indianapolis 500. What's kind of his mentality? What have you seen from him this year? Now that, I don't know if it's fair to say the pressure's off, but in a way the pressure's off.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he has seemed so excited and so joyful to be back here at IMS as a defending champion. I think he comes into this race after last year with so much confidence. He won last year's race, of course, from the pole, a very different racing experience for him this year, but I don't think he's any less confident than he was last year. And winning this race, you talk to so many drivers that after you win this race, it just instills this undescribable level of confidence and comfort with this track and this race, knowing that it's 500 miles and you don't have to panic from the start because of no matter how far you are back, because I think that idea of 500 miles sets in a little bit differently than it does when you haven't won this race.
Sure.
I think Tony Kanaan's that same way, having won his first race, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Will Power, other guys like that. He's certainly someone that, even from 25th, would be in no way surprised to see him win today.
He's the kind of guy, too, that needs to be that confident in himself. He talks about how, he's talked about this for years, about when he's feeling like himself, like he's feeling like he's the best driver on the track, that's when he is the best driver on the track. And there are times where he's gotten down. That year before last year, where he had kind of an off season trying to defend his championship, he really kind of lost himself a little bit there. And then during the off season, I think he obviously refound himself and had a great season last year. And a confident Simon Pagenaud should be scary to anybody else in the field. But let's move on to Fernando, who you talked about. It's kind of been quiet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like a couple of years ago, like we've had Fernando Alonso here. It was the biggest deal. It was like having, I'm trying to think, rock star here, really.
Yeah.
I mean, and now, you know, he had the incredible debut. Then he got bumped last year. He was just kind of the story for a couple of years now, and now he's kind of flying under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I wrote about Fernando before we opened up practice last Wednesday, and haven't written about him much. I mean, he's had a couple days where he's been up there toward the top, 4th or 5th on the speed charts, but hasn't always been that high. He qualified lowest of his 3 Arrow McLaren SP teammates with Pato O'Ward and Oliver Askew. I think he's been a little bit frustrated with his car at times. He crashed on Thursday of practice week, the second day that they were out there, so that caused I don't know if that caused some nerves or if that threw anything off. They obviously did not qualify as well as they were hoping to,
right.
But just another guy that you feel like, with the experience that he got leading this race in 2017, is a guy that if he finds himself up there the last 20, 30 laps, is a guy that, you know, when you see that name, you know his drive, his competitiveness, I think could be a big factor in this race potentially.
I'm torn because I can't decide if, like, he's starting in the back and he's never had to do that before because he didn't get to race last year, and he started up at the front his first year, so this is something he's never had to do before, and so that I'm like, well, there's that inexperience, but he was plenty inexperienced in 2017, and that didn't seem to be a problem.
Yeah.
Also, nerves are never going to be an issue for a guy like Fernando Alonso, who's a 2-time world champion. I don't think that's going to be a problem for him, so I just wonder, I wonder how he's going to start the race. Do you have a guess? I mean, it's right now, nobody's giving away game plans right now before they're on to start. But do you think he goes aggressive at the start if he can to try to make some moves up, or is he just going to play it patient?
My guess is, especially because we heard from him and the team last week that because he's starting and signing a new contract with Renault in F1, he's got a 2-year deal with them. He restarts his Formula One career in 2021 with them. He said that he will not be able to race in the Indy 500 while he is driving in Formula One for Renault. So we don't know if this is his last 500, if it's just his last 500 for a couple years. So my guess is, because this is a 500-mile race, I don't think when you're back there, I don't think you need to get too aggressive.
Okay.
And I mean, as someone who's been around the sport for less than a year, so take this for what it's worth, my feeling is that there's no reason to risk everything that it took to get him here in this race for a second time after what happened last year. There's no reason to make a risky pass or try to go too big too quickly, because this is a 500-mile race. This is a 3-hour endurance competition, and I don't think you have to feel like you need to get right out of the gate super quick.
One of the things that stands out about him as we get ready for Gil de Ferran, about to make an appearance on this show, is that he has, like I said, he just soaks up knowledge. He seems to absorb everybody that talks to him, drivers, guys like Gil, guys that he has around him. He just kind of takes it all in and seems to, then it's just with him. And I don't think, I think a lot of teams would kill to have drivers like that who just soak up that information like that. And that's, again, why he's a 2-time world champion. But now we have our guest here, an Indianapolis 500 champion, Gil de Ferran, is going to join us after the commercial break. See, I was a little tease there for you guys. So, stay with us and, come back to Pit Pass Live, presented by Gamebridge.
In both racing and investing, winning demands consistency. Lap after lap after lap. Gamebridge offers intuitive annuity products within an innovative digital platform to help you protect and grow your money, empowering you to save with confidence. Gamebridge, proud sponsor of the Indianapolis 500. In both racing and investing, winning demands consistency. Lap after lap after lap. Gainbridge offers intuitive annuity products within an innovative digital platform to help you protect and grow your money, empowering you to save with confidence. Gainbridge, proud sponsor of the Indianapolis 500.
Hey there, IndyCar race fans. Thank you so much for joining us in today's version of Pit Pass Live, presented by Gainbridge. I'm Nathan Brown, IndyStar's Motorsports Insider, and I'm joined now by McLaren Racing Director Gil de Ferran. Gil, how are you doing today?
I'm very good. Actually, totally focused on the race later on today, running through everything over and over again, what we have to do to execute well this afternoon.
Well, it's so great to see you back here. We all know how last year for McLaren at the 500 unfolded. Fernando not being able to qualify. I think it was back in August of last year that we heard the news that McLaren Racing and Aero Schmidt-Peterson's IndyCar team were going to be merging together with, first off, two full-time drivers in young guys, Pato Ward and Oliver Askew. Guys are, of course, joined now this week for today's race by two-time Formula One champion Fernando Alonso. What has this last year of these two big names in the series and in racing in general been like? How has the merger been for you guys?
Well, I tell you, it's been pretty intense, as you can imagine. Obviously, I think we're all dealing with the difficulties of this pandemic, but you know, we set ourselves a pretty high bar and shall we say stretched goals, you know, and we have a group of guys in the UK, between technicians and engineers and so on, working together with the great people that we had here in Indianapolis, and I'm happy to report that we come a long way in this partnership already. You know, we had a decent start to the year, you know, with Pato and Oliver, and but it's still a long way to go. You know, it's bringing the two organizations together has been very exciting, and I think as I look towards the race today, you know, we're in a good situation. I think with all three drivers, Fernando, Pato, and Oliver, they had a good month so far. So we just have to execute today.
I know when we got a chance to talk with you and Zach Brown and Sam Schmidt and Taylor Kyle, it was about a week ago before practice started. It was really interesting to hear you guys talk about the fact that in the midst of this pandemic, that in some ways you guys said that almost helped these two entities come together for this season specifically. Tell me a little bit about why that was so helpful when you guys are trying to merge everything that's going on here in the United States with the engineers at McLaren that you have working behind the scenes for this team.
Well, the simple explanation to that is that we had a little more runway, you know, so we were under a lot of pressure to try to develop a lot of things together, and we had a very short runway. I know some people think, oh, you had, you know, 4 or 5 months to since the announcement of the partnership until the first race. But some of these programs or some of these things that we're working on, you know, sometimes they take a year or two to come to fruition. So the fact that we had a little more runway, I think helped us a little bit accelerate some of the programs that we had in mind. The downside of that is less face-to-face, right? We had a plan to bring some people to the UK from the US and vice versa. You know, we were going to do a lot of that, and just to help with the integration and getting to know each other and understand the different environments. But we weren't able to do that. So on the flip side of that is that we landed here in Indy and we're all together for the first time, and it's been pretty intense, but it's gone fairly well.
You mentioned that it kind of accelerated things a little bit. We've seen those results right on the track. Of course, Pato secured his first podium in his IndyCar career in the second race at Road America. Almost looked like he was going to have a chance to win that race. Ended up finishing second there, and you guys follow that up with Oliver Askew's third place finish at Iowa. What did those results in those back-to-back weekends signal for you guys from your two really young, relatively inexperienced compared to a lot of these field drivers?
Well, it's certainly encouraging. Pato and Oliver both had a good start of the season. They've been very competitive, and to your point, a couple of podiums, a pole position, and so on. And in many ways, that has been very encouraging. But in other ways, it's like, okay, that was in the past. That was good, and our focus is forward. We need to continue to improve, continue to bring this integration in the partnership to a higher and higher level, and that's our focus on a day-to-day basis.
These last 2 weeks here at IMS, I know this is the first time that both Pato and Oliver will be racing in this race. Fernando's been in it once. What, along with Fernando's experience in the 500 and just all his racing experience in general, how do you feel like he's been a bit of an asset to this team with these two younger drivers as we come into today's race?
Personally?
Oh,
Fernando.
no, I'm talking about Fernando. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, look, I think the way I like to put it is, being fast is just one aspect of being a champion. You certainly to become a champion, like Fernando has throughout his career. For sure, you have to be fast, but there are also many other things to your game that you need to do well. And I think whenever you have the opportunity to work with somebody like him in close proximity, you hear what he's saying, you look at his data, you understand what he's thinking, and so on and so forth. It's impossible not to absorb some good lessons there.
Let's talk a little bit about you before we wrap up. Just really quickly, as a former winner of this race, a very unique, interesting 500. What does it feel like being back here among these very unique circumstances?
Well, it certainly brings home, I think the situation that we all find ourselves in during this pandemic, and in many ways it feels very different, to walk in here and not see all the fans. In fact, just where we are here now usually is full of fans, and a few guys that are always here that I say hello to every year, and that certainly feels different. And particularly yesterday, it was a day of reflection for me on that, how different this year has been. And but I gotta tell you, today I'm just very focused on executing, making good decisions, and making sure we do the best we can with the bits that we control.
Well, Gil, thank you so much for joining us on Pit Pass Live, presented by Gamebridge. After the break, we will come back and talk a little bit more about today's rows toward the front with Jim Aiello. We'll also be joined by Doug Boles. Thank you so much. Continue to stay with us after the break.
Thank you.
In both racing and investing, winning demands consistency. Lap after lap after lap. Gamebridge offers intuitive annuity products within an innovative digital platform to help you protect and grow your money, empowering you to save with confidence. Gamebridge, proud sponsor of the Indianapolis 500.
Welcome back to Pit Pass Live, presented by Gamebridge. I'm IndyStar sports reporter Jim Aiello, and joined by Motorsports Insider Nathan Brown. Nathan, that was an awesome interview with Gil. Good to hear from him.
It was.
Good to hear
Always
from a champion. It's the guys. Those are the kind of guys that you just can't you can't hear enough from them, especially on days like this.
No, I mean, his experiences coming so close in some of his first times here and then winning in 2003, just a really, really exciting story, and so good to have him back around this race.
A vital cog to that team, obviously, provides a lot of experience, especially on a day like today. We're going to get back to talking about today's race, though, and the guys actually driving into the race. We're going to go to row number 8, but again, kind of what we talked about earlier, filled with intriguing veterans who have won this race.
Absolutely.
Definitely, how about we start with Will Power?
Yeah.
Because Will Power is a guy who's, in his career, has just consistently got better on ovals, especially super speedways, capped by his triumph a couple years ago. What do you think his chances are of being able to kind of move through the field again? I know you predicted Elio might be able to do it. You said Simon might be able to do it. What about Will?
Absolutely. I think Will has a great chance to. He has been very vocal over these last couple weeks. I think a little frustrated with with the car that they had going into qualifying.
Yeah.
Qualifying their 22nd.
Vocal? Are you
Yes,
really?
yes. Surprise, right? He was one of the first guys that we heard when it appeared that Chevy didn't quite have what Honda brought as far as qualifications is concerned. He let us know, and he kind of gave us a little bit of insight into why. But now that we're past that, we have also heard him say he does feel very good about his race car. And as you mentioned, he came from being a driver that was really inconsistent on super speedways and ovals to winning this race in 2018. Came so close in other years, and I think he's one of those guys like Tony, Simon, Elio, Fernando, guys that would not be surprised to see them around floating in the top 5, top 10 when we get to when the real race starts here about 50 laps to go.
The thing that concerns me about Will, and I say this knowing that Will's one of the best drivers in the field, is that occasionally he presses, especially when he's feeling a little bit of pressure. Things haven't gone well during a season. He'll push a little bit to try to make something happen. Obviously, we talked about it in this race. If you do that, it can be great. It can work out well. We've seen Alexander Rossi make incredible moves doing that. Tony Kanaan has done it. We'll talk about Tony in a second.
Yep.
And Will might be able to pull off the exact same thing. But on occasion, if you do push too early or in the wrong spot, or the guys you're trying to go around aren't going to comply and play nice with you, it can be the end of your day.
Yeah.
So I worry about Will in that way. But again, there's fewer talented drivers, if that many talented drivers in the field, more talented drivers in the field than Will Power. So it should be fun to watch him. The guy I also want to talk about, though, Tony Kanaan, another former champion, another guy who loves to make his bones on restarts, a guy who does a lot of damage, especially at the start. And I saw in your story today, he actually said he might not try to do anything at the start, and I think he's just playing people. I think he's just trying to get that quote out there, and then he's going to try to pass 6 cars at the start.
Yeah, that would not surprise me at all. We've heard a lot of drivers kind of waffle back and forth on what today's race is going to look like in terms of ease of passing. I think oftentimes from my research and how I read your coverage that these last couple years, you hear drivers kind of talk about the week leading up to the race, it's going to be a really tough race to pass. And then guys just kind of, with the Borg Warner and all the money and everything on the line, they just make it work.
Yeah.
And I think Tony is one of those guys that, particularly on restarts with where he's starting, he's going to have to take some risks. Maybe he doesn't do it in the first couple laps of this race, but once we get to the halfway mark, if he's still around there in 15th or 20th or like that, he's going to have to start making some moves, and there's no one better at it, but it'll be interesting to see how he performs today in his AJ Foyt racing car with all that considered.
I like that you give him credit. Nobody better than that. I mean, Alexander Rossi talked about we all know some of the heroic moves he's made over the last couple of years, and he gives credit to Tony Kanaan for being, hey, I watched you, I studied your film, and that's what kind of inspired me to be able to do what I'm able to do. I think if Tony has the car to be able to do it, you're right. He maybe doesn't do it at the start, but we know how cautions are here. Yellows beget yellows. If there's one, he's going to have multiple opportunities throughout the race to make some passes, and if he's got the car to do it, he's definitely a guy that can. So I wouldn't count out Tony Kanaan. Just again, a guy who was trying to race. It was Indy 500 pretty much only at this point, right? Or does he have another race coming up?
So his last races of the year will be in Gateway. He's obviously on this oval-only schedule. So Gateway coming up next weekend here will be his final races of his TK last lap. He's made a point to say many times this year that he is not retiring. We will see Tony again in an Indy car outside of 2020, but we don't know when, we don't know where. We hope it will be at the 500, certainly. He's made a point he doesn't want a fanless 500 to be his last one, but we will see where the rest of his career takes him.
Let's move on to the next row. A guy that made quite a name for himself last year by just showing up and looking like a 20-year veteran when he was in fact a rookie, and Santino Ferrucci. This is a guy that it was funny about what Santino did during the race. It was that he actually did it all through practice and looked good in qualifying last year too. I mean, this is a guy that just kind of looked in his element last year. This year, he qualified toward the back. Haven't really mentioned his name too much, but a guy who clearly knows what he's doing here.
Yeah, he qualified 19th, sits there on the inside of row 7. Has kind of gone back and forth on how he feels like his car's been performing. It was a really tough couple days for them. Not, as you mentioned, not a great qualifying weekend for them last weekend, especially when you see your rookie teammate qualifying 7th in Alex Palou. I imagine that was a little bit frustrating with him, but he said this week that they started to find things out a little bit. They, I think, really got into a good groove on Sunday's practice after qualifying. He said when we heard from him most recently that they maybe went a little too far, like found a good position and almost kind of overcorrected in a way on Sunday's practice and had to get things back in a little bit of a groove on carb day 2 days ago. But I think he's a guy, if they come into today's race with the right car, he proved last year when he's got the right equipment, he can make some noise in this race, and even starting from 19th there, kind of at the front of those veteran drivers that we just talked about. There's no reason why we couldn't see Santino up toward the front.
That car has performed well here historically. Sebastian Bourdais used to be the pilot of that car and has done well here, there. Obviously, they've had some changes in the engineering group, but if, like you said, you got the right engine manufacturer right now for the power. If you need to make those moves up, and again, we've seen Seton Santino in his first year and a half now, I guess, make some bold and daring choices during his career. If he's got the car, like you said, he might do it. Anybody else on this row that intrigues you? Oliver Askew is joining him here. We got another rookie. What do you think here?
Oliver Askew, the middle of these Air McLaren SP cars in the field. He has had some bright moments, as we mentioned. He finished on the podium at Iowa. And also Jack Harvey, we mentioned Meyershank Racing with that Andretti Autosport technical partnership. Andretti's been strong these last 10 days. No reason why an Andretti technical partnership car like him can't find his way toward the front along with the other Andretti cars that we have in the top 15 or so of the field.
Give me, I can't remember. I think you wrote the story about Jack Harvey and the helmet that he's...
that was our intern, Michael McCleary.
Oh, Michael McCleary, okay. Yeah, he's going to be honoring a guy who's supported his career a long time, Pat Kennedy.
Yes.
I think it's a really cool story, feel-good story. Again, if you don't know about the Kennedys, they've been involved in racing in a long time, and especially in Jack's career. You should check that story out on IndyStar.com. Michael McCleary, his story. Definitely something, like I said, it'd be a feel-good story if he was able to race to the front. And he's had some success here at Indianapolis. It wasn't necessarily during the during the 500, he was in the lead a couple of years ago. He finished in the top 3 at the GP last year, so he knows what he's doing around here and has had some success.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to the next row.
Yep.
This is the ECR row, right?
Yes, it is.
Got a couple of guys. I mean, speaking of guys who know what they're doing around here, Connor Daly had his best race of his career last year with Andretti Autosport, and if not for like a kind of a I wouldn't call it a bad restart, but just kind of a troubled restart maybe at the end. The guy maybe had a top 5 lined up, and I don't need to spell or read through Ed's resume here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The guy has come so close to winning. Started on the pole multiple times. I mean, he is a guy that, I would say, if maybe not Tony Kanaan, is the biggest fan favorite here to try to win the 500. Fan favorite. People cheering at home, I should say.
Yep, you're right. Ed's cars right there. Both those two guys are equipped with their resumes of trying to challenge in this race. You mentioned Connor last year with the best car that he's had, and it might, maybe he has an even better car this week. Those Ed Carpenter Racing cars just find a way, no matter the driver, to make it up toward the front. I know they weren't super happy with where they qualified, being in 16th and 18th, but don't count those guys out. I mean, they put the top Chevy in the Fast 9, the only Chevy, with Rinus VeeKay, who we'll get to in a little bit, starting 4th. So you've got all those guys putting together those cars. I know Rinus qualified a little bit better, but no reason to not think that he could be joined by his two more experienced teammates once we get maybe toward the halfway point of this race.
Yeah, it's weird. Are they going to be getting crib notes from their young teammate there? It's like, hey, what are you doing out there? Ed Carpenter and Connor Dale asking notes from Rinus VeeKay. That seems weird, but hey, maybe there's something in that car that they can copy and replicate for the race.
Entirely possible. As you mentioned, Ed's come so darn close in this race so many times. You got to think at some point that it will work and it will happen for him, and maybe this is the year with a little less spotlight than we might normally be used to. We normally see him there in the Fast 9, maybe on pole, so not being there, maybe this is the year.
All right, coming up in a little bit, we'll go to the top 5 rows, but coming up next, you're going to hear from IMS President Doug Boles, the only man here dressed better than Nathan Brown.
In both racing and investing, winning demands consistency. Lap after lap after lap. Gainbridge offers intuitive annuity products within an innovative digital platform to help you protect and grow your money, empowering you to save with confidence. Gainbridge, proud sponsor of the Indianapolis 500.
Thank you for joining us on today's race day edition of Pit Pass Live, brought to you by Gainbridge. I'm Nathan Brown, IndyStar Motorsports Insider, and we are joined now by IMS President Doug Boles, the man who played such a major role in just getting this race to come together today. Doug, thanks for joining us. Thanks for helping us have this 104th running of the Indy 500 this year.
Well, thanks for having me, and it's as you know, because you've followed us all along through this. It's been a tough 5 months. It's certainly been a tough 5 months for our country and our community, and we're excited to have the race. We're disappointed we don't get to have fans, but we're hoping that this is a little bit of hope that sports fans can have, that people can figure out a way to at least enjoy the sport in this difficult time.
Mm-hmm. You've been, I imagine, around this track today for hours upon hours upon hours, soaking all of this up. What have these hours of August 23rd been like for you? I know this is not what you probably envisioned when the calendar turned to 2020 for an Indy 500, but what has today been like so far for you?
You know, normally, my day normally starts on Saturday, and I stay up all night because we've got the Snake Pit to build out. We've got Legends Day concert that we're cleaning up from. So this was kind of strange. Last night about 2 o'clock in the morning, I was looking around not sure what to do. And my wife said, why don't you go to sleep? So I actually slept, which was nice. I got up a little before 6, and then I've just really spent the time. I haven't gone outside yet. I've spent most of the time in here, just kind of working through, making sure the team's ready to go. It's been odd not having fans because that's so much of what this place is about. But I'll go out and join some of the fans later today and thank them for coming. It's amazing the number of people that just want to be near the Speedway. But it's been it's been a busy morning, but it's been really quiet, no big fires. I love to help the team solve issues. So it's just been really odd, and we'll soak it in and enjoy the little bit of peace we have, and then hope that we don't ever have to do it again, and we can do it with fans and all the chaos that comes with it.
You mentioned you will at some point today go out to join those fans that are lining the outsides of this track. You did that this weekend when we were watching qualifications cycle through. You got a chance to experience what those folks saw and enjoyed and loved about Marco Andretti's landing on the pole. What did you take away from that experience with those fans that you got to spend those that little bit of time with this weekend?
Well, ever since I've been president, I have tried to take that Fast 9 and go sit in the grandstands with the fans, and just partially because I'm a fan, I want to enjoy it, but more than anything, just to understand how the fans are interacting with that way of qualifying. And so this year I thought I have to do the same thing. So I actually went outside and watched all 9 qualifying runs from outside the gates with the fans who couldn't come in. And the thing I took away mostly from that is just how passionate our fans were. The disappointing side for me a little bit was just how excited they were about Marco. And I would have loved to have had Marco experience that 100 times if we'd had folks in here. But certainly the biggest thing out of the last couple weeks is just the passion that the fans have, and how much they're just committed to being near 16th and Georgetown, even if they can't be in 16th and Georgetown, and we got the best fans in the world, and heartbroken for them, but also pretty encouraged about how passionate they are about the sport.
I know the passion and just how great these fans are is had to have been why this decision for you guys, Roger Penske, Mark Miles, why the decision to not have fans at this race was so incredibly tough. When you guys had to make that decision back in the early couple days of August, maybe just kind of tell me just how gut-wrenching that was for you guys, knowing how much you guys put into trying to make fans at this year's race happen.
Well, I think you maybe know more than anybody, because Roger and I both at some point in time told you that we don't want to have the 500 without fans, because fans are what make the 500 work. I think I maybe even said that an Indy 500 without fans is just a 500-mile race at the Speedway. And emotionally and romantically, I think we really still believe that. But when you step back and looked at it over time, as we thought, okay, maybe 100% fans when we moved it in March, we said, hey, let's move May to August. Then we got to the 50%, and then ultimately, 25, and then the decision not to have any fans. I think as we looked at the whole sport and really the whole country and the impact on our community and the opportunity to have this community, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, this series on an international stage, it's a little short-sighted maybe to just let the romantic side of us take over. And while that was a difficult conversation to have with our fans, and I'm a fan first and foremost, I think ultimately our fans have understood it, have been really great about it. And it's one of the toughest decisions I think I've ever been involved with. Roger Penske, though, his attitude is unbelievable. All along, he's been very positive. Nothing has really set him sideways. And I think we're blessed to have him right now, and that just, I think, bodes well for the future of the Speedway.
You mentioned Roger. We found out it was 9 or 10 months ago that he was going to be taking over the Speedway on November 4th, 2019. Officially became the owner in January. We started to hear and then eventually see what he was going to do with this place. You've been alongside him for so much of these last 8 or 9 months or so. What has impressed you the most about Roger Penske, the now owner of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
His attitude, first of all, it's just always positive. He is always, as he says, everything's an opportunity, and he really means that. So no matter how much of a struggle you seem like it is, he believes that's an opportunity and finds a way to get positive from it. So I think that's the biggest thing. The other thing is, nobody works harder than Roger Penske. His work ethic is amazing, and then the other thing is his attention to detail is unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. And I mean, he gets down and really, like all these restrooms we've renovated, he was in every single one of those restrooms on multiple occasions, helping us think through exactly how they should look and how they should work. So when you combine that work ethic and that attention to detail, it's pretty hard to imagine a better leader. And then when you add to it his attitude, he's just about the perfect leader you could have, and he's the right guy for the right time. Hallman George family has done so much great stuff for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and handing it off to Roger Penske may be another one of the great things that, as history looks back on, that Tony Hallman and his family really did in the right way for this institution.
I know as this race has gotten closer, you've been asked a lot of times, both by reporters and by fans themselves, about fans' streaks. We have fans that have been going to this race for 50, 60, 70 years straight. And I know you've had a pretty consistent message ever since the track opened last Wednesday about fans who were worried about feeling like their streak was ending this year because they couldn't come to the race. What has your message been for those folks?
Well, so the first thing is, this isn't a decision the fans made. It's one thing if a fan decides or something of the fans choosing keeps them from coming. But when we can't have them at all, that's a completely different situation. We actually issued a proclamation yesterday, which I'd never done before in my 7 years as president, that basically says, on behalf of everybody at the Speedway, these streaks can remain, and here's why. And the biggest reason of that is this is not the fans choosing. And all we ask them to do is listen on the radio or tune in on TV today, and then come back in the 105th. And as far as we're concerned, that streak remains intact.
Yep. I had a chance to join you and Simon Pagenaud yesterday as you guys went out into the Speedway community. You guys held a mini parade with all the drivers and the cherry red Camaros, and after that went to 33 different homes of Speedway residents who are ticket holders of this year's race, whether they've been going to this race just for a couple years or for decades, and got to surprise them with a driver showing up at their house. Where we went, Susan, a woman who lives just across the track and turned 4, had been coming to this race for almost 50 years, got surprised by not only you, not only Simon, but the Borg Warner Trophy. What why was that so important for you guys to do that on a day that, with the parade and everything around that day, Legends Day, drivers meeting, why that was so important for you guys to do yesterday?
Well, we've said all along that this place is what it is, especially the Indy 500 is what it is because of the fans. Without the fans, it is just another race. And so the fans are really what have helped build this into the greatest spectacle in racing. So we've really felt like we can't just say that. We got to put our money where our mouth is and make sure the fans know that. So the virtual drivers meeting, the drivers started out in somebody's seat saying, hey, Nathan, I'm sitting in your seats. Can't wait to have you next year. So we wanted to build that connection. And then just running through the town of Speedway, we've got this great relationship with the town. It's just out our front door. And then decided, let's just go see ticket customers and thank them. And the best way to do that is take the drivers to them. And it was pretty fun because nobody knew it was coming. It was a complete surprise to folks. The drivers had a blast, which was even better. So for me, it was just another way for us to just prove to our fans that it is all about the fans. And even in a year we can't have fans here, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we haven't forgotten them and we need them to be successful, even on a day when they can't be here.
Well, on behalf of the media, on behalf of the fans and everyone in the Indy area, thank you for not only joining us today, but for making sure that we have an Indy 500 to enjoy and watch in some way, shape, or form today. So thanks, Doug, for joining us. As we come back, we'll be rejoined by Jim Aiello, and we will break down the final 5 rows of this field after a commercial break.
In both racing and investing, winning demands consistency. Lap after lap after lap. Gainbridge offers intuitive annuity products within an innovative digital platform to help you protect and grow your money, empowering you to save with confidence. Gainbridge, proud sponsor of the Indianapolis 500.
Hello, race fans, and welcome back to Pit Pass Live, presented by Gainbridge. I am IndyStar sports reporter Jim Aiello, and joined by IndyStar Motorsports insider Nathan Brown, who just finished up an interview with Doug Boles. Like I said, you guys looked great together, the two of you. I hope somebody was taking pictures. I mean, Clark here producing the show, get a still image and post it on you can make it your Facebook background or something like that. So we're going row by row. We're going to get to predictions here soon, I promise. I'm sure people want to know, if you haven't read the paper, who we predicted to win. But we are going to go row by row. We're going to get into row 5. And there's a guy that I picked to finish in the top 3. Joseph Newgarden, I think, is kind of the headliner of this row. We've talked about Penske and the struggles of Chevrolet a little bit already, but if you had to pick one Penske is to race up to the front, who do you think it might be? Is it Joseph or somebody else?
So I picked Elio in my top 3.
Okay.
Kind of going out on a limb a little bit. It was 2 other drivers that are up toward the front, and then him coming back from 28th. But Joseph doesn't, is when you talk about Will and Simon and Elio, those guys really have to make some magic work to get up into that top 4 or 5 to make a charge for these last couple laps of the race. But Joseph is really in a pretty good place. I know he didn't make the Fast 9. It was the first time since the early 2000s that we didn't have a Penske driver in that Fast 9. But Joseph sitting at 13th, he can kind of settle in a little bit. He doesn't have to get risky at the start of the race. He doesn't have to work too hard. This has been a race the last couple years that he's been starting to get better at. We've started seeing him kind of climb up the leaderboard with his finishes these last few years. And starting 13th, he's in that middle chunk of rows, I think, is certainly the strongest driver. You have some more inexperience there than I think you do in the back of the field or in the front of the field. So he's driving around some drivers that maybe don't have as much experience as he does, but as long as he can stay safe, stay out of trouble, I think he could use that to his advantage.
Joseph's a guy, I feel like this way about Alexander Rossi with an IndyCar championship. He's going to get one. Mm-hmm. Joseph is going to win. Joseph's already got 2 of those. Joseph's going to get a 500.
Yeah. It's
going to happen. He's too talented of a driver. He's got too much skill, too much drive to not get one. I don't know if it happens this year, but he's one of those guys. I don't know if I say this about many guys in the field, but I'm just like, it's going to happen one year for him. And it's happened to his teammates the last couple of years, and he's had a front row seat for it, and has been very nice about it. Like, he says all the right things about his teammates, but it hurts. It hurts him to see his teammates have that success and him come close. He's had some good races, He just hasn't been able to do it. He's got a top 3, not with that was with Ed with Carpenter Racing, but he's raced really well with Penske. It's coming for him. Like I said, it might not be this year, but that's somebody that I would definitely keep an eye on for sure.
Absolutely.
Another guy I wanted to ask you about was Pato O'Ward. We kind of talked about Arrow McLaren SP already, but I wanted to know what you thought his experience is going to be, because he didn't make the race last year. He had a tough go of it, and everybody kind of thought it was going to be his rookie year. He'll get some experience last year. Everything was great. He's actually kind of a rookie this year because he just hasn't done this before.
Yeah, he had to go through his rookie test this year, along with his teammate Oliver Askew, and 5 total drivers that had to do that this year. But he comes in here maybe with a little bit more of a pep in his step. He took a pole in Road America, the second race there a little bit more than a month ago. He finished second in that race, was set up to win it with just a couple laps to go.
Yep.
He's a driver that we even saw some really good things from in what you would call, quote unquote, his rookie performance, for the first couple races of his career. And we actually saw him on Carb Day 2 days ago. He had the fastest single lap time that day. It was over 225 miles an hour, ahead of guys like Scott Dixon, like Marco Andretti, guys that had been up high so much of these practice days leading up. So I think that you don't want to necessarily put too much stock in a single practice session, but if you're going to be the best car of the day, the last practice is certainly a good time to do it.
Hey, I think, Mario Andretti was one of those guys. It gave him confidence to be the fastest guy at practice. Didn't matter what day it was. If he was the fastest guy at practice, he felt good about it. Marco actually was like that. It is like that too. So if you're the fastest guy and you turn the fastest lap, that just gives you a jolt of confidence. Even if everybody else was trying something else, or they were doing, who knows what everybody else was up to, you're still going to feel good about it. So
absolutely,
that's a good jolt of confidence for him. All right, we'll move on to row 4. Another guy who was sort of making a rookie debut in Colton Herta, because Colton only got a couple laps through, I think 3 laps through last year before his day was over, and I don't even think the car was running all that well at that point. Just kind of trying to feel it out and see what was going on. So Colton Herta, again, immensely talented young driver, definitely the future of this series, but another guy who's kind of taking his first stab at this.
Yeah, he is. Not the rookie performance that you would have expected out of him. He went on last year to win 2 races, had already won his first coming here at Circuit of the Americas, would go on to win another toward the end of the year. I asked him actually about that experience that he had last year a couple days ago, and if he'd put that behind him. He said, if something like that could happen, that's obviously the absolute last track that you want that to happen, but I think he just kind of shrugged it off. That was absolutely not in his control, and so I don't necessarily feel like he doesn't come out of his rookie race feeling like, I screwed up, I took too big of a risk, I crashed, and I think he's got a chance to have a fresh start. Comes in a little bit under the radar because his Andretti teammates have been so incredibly strong. He has 4 of his teammates there in the Fast 9 ahead of him. He starts 10th today on the inside of row 4.
Yeah.
But another guy to watch out for, like Joseph, doesn't have to take too many risks or too big of shots early on, can kind of settle into this race and also take advantage of the fact that Andretti Autosport, from a technical partnership standpoint, is 7 cars in this 33-car field. And from what I've heard, those breakdown meetings have been somewhat long at times this year.
I bet.
Maybe actually not as long this year because they've had to clear the garages by a certain time
Yeah.
for the COVID-19 protocols that they've been trying to work around. So gotten a lot of feedback from all those different cars. They were able to try all different things these first couple of days of practice, and we'll see if his car has maybe kind of found that sweet spot.
All right, we're going to move on to row 3 here into the Fast 9. Don't want to bypass guys like Marcus Ericsson and Spencer Pigot, but we're up against the clock a little bit. We want to get to our predictions, so we're going to get to row 3. Full of intrigue here. You already talked to Alex Palou, so we'll move on past him because you already dove right into that. You got Graham Rahal, who's starting higher up than he usually does, almost ever, I think.
Yeah.
I think his highest qualifying spot.
Highest, if not the highest, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's huge for him. This is a guy that has had to make his way through the field, I feel like, in every race in his life, not just the Indianapolis 500s.
Yeah.
He's never been a great qualifier. He's had a little bit better success this year, and this is going to be the easiest time he's had trying to make his way to the front because he doesn't have to pass so many guys. And speaking of passing a lot of guys, he's paired up with a guy on his row, Alexander Rossi, who just loves to rack up passes and has been probably the best at it the last few years. I mean, you can make an argument, and I know our columnist Greg Doyle has in recent years. He's stolen the show. He's been the show, Alexander Rossi. So plenty of intrigue on this row. What do you think of the futures of today for Graham Rahal and Alexander Rossi?
Yeah, it's the way I've been viewing it in my head. It's really hard to call someone a dark horse when they drive for Andretti Autosport or Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, especially when your last name is Rahal.
Yeah.
But with all the strength that they have ahead of them, starting 8th and 9th in this race, you get a feeling that with how they've performed, particularly Rossi, I know neither of them were super happy with how they qualified, just kind of didn't fare super well in the Fast 9 on a super windy, kind of weird day last Sunday, but you get the feeling that I think these guys are really happy with their race cars. You mentioned this is one of the best, if not the best, cars Graham has had at a 500, and Rossi, as you mentioned, one of the best, if not the best passers that we've had here since he made his debut in 2016 and won the race. If passing is any sort of an issue today, one of the few guys that I still have faith in being able to pass is Alexander Rossi.
What do you think? It's been kind of a rough start to the season for Alexander Rossi. The guy is desperate for a championship. It probably doesn't happen this year because of the way he started, and then also because Scott Dixon has just been untouchable, and we'll get to him later. So what are all the eggs of the 2020 basket in the Indianapolis 500 for Alexander Rossi right now?
I mean, if he's going to have any chance for a championship this year, then he has to win this race. There's no question about it. It is all or nothing for this 500, and maybe in a sense that kind of brings him into this race a little bit free. I mean, if he doesn't win the race, a championship is gone, and he probably even needs some help from Scott Dixon to even make that possible. But he wasn't super confident in his qualifying car coming into this, still found a way to get into the Fast 9. Is an Andretti car that has so much support from a technical side of this, and as you mentioned, in his first 4 years of this, has been so successful, so much experience. You got to think that there's still a little bit of frustration not being able to pull last year's win off in his duel with Simon Pagenaud. So with all the frustrations that he's had this year, his frustration here last year, good luck contending with a little bit frustrated and very strong Alexander Rossi at the 500.
Frustrated Alexander Rossi is very scary, but we kind of talked about this maybe with Will about pressing a little bit. Do you think that might lead to him pressing a little bit? And it's not that the guy's never made any mistakes here, but could it lead to that, you think? I
mean, there's a chance, if there's anyone that could, make a mishap with, maybe he's trying to pass a young driver like the guys ahead of him, Alex Palou and Rinus VeeKay. Maybe there's a little bit more of a chance that he could end up with something with one of those guys, because he is one of those super aggressive drivers, especially on restarts like we've talked about with Tony Kanaan and others. So, maybe there's a chance that something like that happens. Certainly don't wish it, because he made this race super exciting last year when he was in contention.
He's the kind of guy who can, like I said, he can't steal a show. He's the kind of guy who can make a race day. And again, you don't want to take anything away from Simon Pagenaud. Last year, that was his day last year, but man, Alexander Rossi made that a heck of a lot of fun to watch at the end of the race.
Certainly right.
And so I bet he can do it again. So we'll move on to Road 2. Some fun names here. You mentioned Alex. We would say not Alex Palou, but Ryan Hunter-Reay is a guy I want to talk about. This is a guy who, again, kind of quiet. He's had some nice performances the last couple of years, but we all know what he can be, especially at this track. And then the other guy I want to talk about is James Hinchcliffe, who's, man, if he wins this race, as Connor Daly said at one point, you can they're going to make a Netflix movie about him, because this has just been, his story is insane. So we'll start with Ryan Hunter-Reay. What has he shown you this month, and is he capable of winning his second?
Yeah, there were a couple of days there in practice before we got to qualifications that he was one of the top, if not the top of those Andretti drivers. Looked really strong in traffic. He's got so much experience at this race. He won the race in a great duel with Helio Castro-Neves in 2014. So he has that experience. He knows what it takes to win this race. He's found himself up toward the front several years now, even since he won that race in 2014. He's one of those guys that you don't really have maybe a great sense of what his strengths are, but he's just a really solid driver when it comes to these big races, these big events. In high pressure situations, he's such an experienced veteran. He's been doing this for so long, and I think he's one of those guys that hasn't been talked about quite as much because of some of these names that we have in the first row.
Right.
He's a guy that if he finds himself in these last 10 or 15 laps, and I'm a driver that's in front of him, I would be really, really worried, because we saw what he does in a come-from-behind fashion in 2014.
I would also say on Ryan, I think people forget in 2017 when Fernando was, because again, Ryan kind of has been buried underneath other storylines, but Ryan was having a great race in 2017 when Fernando, he led laps too, Ryan did, and Ryan looked like he might have been in line to win that race before his engine blew. And so this guy hasn't forgotten how to drive in Indianapolis. If he's given the right car, and it looks like he's got it, he's going to be really, really dangerous. Now, I do want to mention really fast Rinus VeeKay. He's on this row with them, young guy. Like I said, we mentioned earlier, Connor and Ed will be taking notes from Renus VK on how to get up to the front of the field. Just kidding, guys. But what do you expect out of him? I mean, that's a tough spot. You're starting around a lot of solid veterans. It's going to be, and he's got to have some nerves being up there. What do you think is going to be, what's going to be like for him just at the start?
Yeah, his first IndyCar race, he crashed both in practice and in the race, but I think he's learned a lot since then. He's really matured. We saw him, embrace and take the pressure of going 240 into turn one on the first lap of his qualifying runs this past weekend. Came of that in flying colors, best Chevy, best driver for Ed Carpenter Racing. So he's passed those first couple steps here. Let's see what he can do with a much bigger test here on Sunday.
All right, before we move on to row one, I did skip over. We mentioned Hinch, and then I skipped over him because I'm bad at my job. James Hinchcliffe, what would it mean? I mean, for this guy who's been through so much in his life, and at this track in particular, getting bumped, almost dying. I mean, just all the things. What would it mean for him to win this race?
Well, if there's any doubt that Hinch is going to come back into a full-time ride next year, no matter who it is, whether it's with Andretti or someone else, you win the 500, he's going to be a full-time driver next year. There's no doubt about it. He's been a really fun storyline to follow with his Genesis partnership that came out of an Instagram DM after he got dropped from Air McLaren SP in the off-season. So he would be such a fan favorite if he could pull this off, and it would be such a great story to cap how this 2020 has been for him.
As journalists, we don't cheer for people, but you cheer for good stories. Nathan is cheering for James Hinchcliffe to win because that would be a great story and easy for him to write. We'll move on to the front row and then make our predictions quick. We got a few more minutes left on the show here. Marco Andretti got the pole. It was an incredible story. It's something his dad never accomplished, something his grandfather accomplished. But we're talking about Andretti lore that finally that Marco accomplished in last week. It was an amazing moment. What was it like to be here and to see that?
It was. I think the thing that I took out of it most, and I didn't really get this until media day, is that it really, I think, kind of was freeing for Marco. We've talked endlessly for years about all the pressure that comes with being an Andretti, driving for your dad, who had so much success in the IndyCar series, almost winning as a rookie in 2006, and he finally comes here after what he called his worst Indy 500 ever in 2019, come back here, be up toward the top of the practice charts right at the start on Wednesday, and then pull off, not only get into the Fast 9, but take Scott Dixon down in the final lap of that Fast 9 on Sunday. Just been an incredible experience. Doug saw how much applause he got from the fans that were out on the outside of the track. IndyCar Nation, I think, is really rooting for him to win this race, and it would just be an unbelievable storyline and experience, not only for this series but for that family and for him.
There's no question Marco's kind of a divisive character within the IndyCar fan base. Some people love him, some people cheer for that Andretti name, some people understand kind of the tough spot he's been put in, and also, some of the things that the privileges that he's enjoyed being an Andretti. And others, like I said, others really don't like him, and it's been interesting to watch. But I really do think that a win for Marco Andretti it'd be great for IndyCar, and I think it might unify the fan base behind him. I think a lot of people would be very happy for him. I
agree.
I'm going to talk about my guy that I want to win. I picked Scott Dixon. The guy. It's been the year of Scott Dixon so far. I think you said in one of your stories today, he's had a down couple of races, only finishing in the top 5. He won the first 3 races of the year. Pretty much the only thing this guy hasn't accomplished is winning multiple Indianapolis 500s. He doesn't need it to cement his legacy as the greatest driver of his generation. He is. It's done. He's one of the greatest IndyCar drivers of all time. But it just seems right that he would have multiple 500s on his resume.
Yeah, he's up until Carb Day, Marco had been up toward the front of the speed charts every day. He finished down in the 20s. Scott still finished up toward the top that day. His Chip Ganassi racing team has always been close. He's had some rough days here the last couple years. Been 12 years since Scott Dixon won an Indy 500. It's amazing to think that he's only won one of these. I too also picked him to win this year. I just think he is the obvious pick given how incredibly strong he's been this year, but this is one of those years where you feel like you just kind of have to pick the favorite, and he is undoubtedly the favorite this year.
All right, the last guy in that row we're going to get to before we wrap up the show is Takuma Sato. All I really want to say about it is I think people are sleeping on this guy. I think they're not talking about him because of Scott, because of Marco. That guy has won this race. He knows how to drive here. He's one of the most talented Indy 500 drivers there is, and he's starting on the front row. Don't sleep on Takuma Sato today.
No, if he finds himself in the final 3 there, 5 laps to go. I think you can guarantee it's going to be an exciting end to this race because of what Takuma Sato knows about being up front, both the mistakes that he's made and the success that he had in 2017.
All right, get yourself on record here. You're 1, 2, 3, real quick, just to recap for people so they know before we close the show.
Scott Dixon in first. Marco Andretti comes super close in second, and Elio Castroneves to come up from 28th, finish third, and cement himself a chance to come back to this race next year.
That's your IndyCar insider making those bold predictions. If he gets them right, you know who to send congratulations to. If he gets them wrong, make sure you torture him on Twitter. That's going to be it for us on Pit Pass Live, presented by Gainbridge. I want to thank all of our guests we had. Thank you, Nathan, for those great interviews. Thank Clark Wade and Nat Newell for helping put on this show. Hope you enjoy it, and please enjoy the race. I know you're all home. Stay healthy, have fun, and enjoy the 104th running of the Indianapolis 500.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me, Jim.